evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Tonight we turn our focus to Borneo, which is facing mounting challenges to its unique biodiversity and ecosystems. Now, Malaysia and Indonesia have joined forces to create the Science Panel for Borneo, which is a multidisciplinary initiative dedicated to tackling these challenges head-on. So drawing inspiration from similar efforts in the Amazon and the Congo Basin, the newly launched SPB will aims to chart a sustainable future for the Bornean rainforest. So joining me today are the co-chairs of the Science Panel for Borneo, Professor Jatna Supriyatna, who is chair of the Research Center for Climate Change at University of Indonesia. He's also the chair of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network Indonesia. I also have Professor Emeritus Datuk Dr. Mazlin Mokhtar, who is Director of the Ecological Systems Program at the UNSDSN Asia headquarters here at Sunway University. Welcome both of you to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Prof. Mazlin, may I begin with you? Talk to me a little bit about what the Science Panel for Borneo is. Why was it set up and what does the work entail?
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, and Consider This for having us in this show. So good to see you at last. Anyway, Science Panel Borneo, as you rightly mentioned, we took cognizance from what the Science Panel Amazon and Congo Basin have done, especially the Amazon, which was launched at the COP26 in Glasgow. And that report had attracted a lot of attention from all stakeholders which are concerned about balancing development and environmental protection. So the keyword is that it's about protecting the environment and biodiversity, but at the end of the day, it's not only just protecting biodiversity and environment, but it's about establishing sustainable development goals. As you know, that is a very ambitious goal that all of us had, and when SDSN decided, and the whole world in fact, have a look at the ecosystems of the world because of the climate change and the emissions of greenhouse gases, they were looking at one other things that could absorb the carbon dioxide and GHGs. And of course they look at forest ecosystems. And if you look at the global map, of course you see the biggest ones, Amazon, Congo Basin, and in fact, it's Southeast Asia.
Yes.
But to do Science Panel Southeast Asia, the two of us initially thought that maybe we should begin with some existing strength. We look at what do we have, maybe look at some of the big programs in Southeast Asia, and we saw Heart of Borneo, which was launched in 2007, 18 years ago. And 2 years after 2007, there was another interesting program pertaining to biodiversity and natural resources, which is called CTI, Coral Triangle Initiatives, looking at coral reefs in our region. But anyway, as you rightly mentioned, Malaysia, Indonesia. But don't forget in Borneo, there's Brunei Darussalam. So at the moment, we have a few Bruneian preeminent researchers in our group, but Shukr Alhamdulillah, with this AWSD, we met a very prominent professor who came from University of Brunei Darussalam, and yesterday we had dinner and discussion. They're going to bring in many more, because we have 7 clusters in the Science Panel Borneo. Quickly, I will mention them. First is geography and geology. Secondly, it's about flora, the botany, the plants. Thirdly is fauna, Prof. Jatna's expertise. Fourthly is social well-being and cultural diversity. Fifth is water and minerals. 7, most important I would say, economy. So very holistic, integrated approach.
Okay, I think so that this concerted effort to conserve, protect the Bornean rainforest, it seems to be there's an urgency there, but maybe Prof. Jatna, you can lay it out for us. Why is it so important that we protect this Borneo? Talk to me about the richness of the biodiversity that is in our backyard, essentially.
Well, you know, if you take a look the whole biodiversity in the world, what you call it, the mega biodiversities. Indonesia, Malaysia, Brazil, all these things, Congo is one of the 10 mega biodiversities, included. And Borneo is one of them.
Wow.
They call the hotspot. Very hot. I mean, it's very diverse. But out of the really high biodiversity, but also challenges, because so many development there. The character of the soils, difference, you know, compared to Java and the Semenanjung, right? Because there are so many, what you call it, the peatland areas. About 7 million, maybe more peatland areas there. So I think there's going to be a lot of vulnerability there. It has to be assessed. You know. So I mean, in terms of development that areas, we need to be really careful. We need to be really need a science and understanding of science of that ecosystem there.
So the science panel for the Amazon, I think was it last year, a couple of years ago, they put out a report essentially assessing the state of the Amazon and its how climate change is impacting its ecosystem. It's essentially, they put out a report which is the encyclopedia of the Amazon.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there going to be an encyclopedia of Borneo, and what is it that we still don't know? Where are the gaps in knowledge when it comes to what we understand about the Borneo rainforest? Do we understand a lot about it, or is there still much more to be learnt about, Prof. Jaffna?
I think there's still scattered knowledge, you know, there's somewhere, you know, in Malaysian side, in Indonesian side, and we need to really understand the whole context.
Okay.
Yeah, and how
knowledge is not being shared, wasn't being shared before?
Exactly.
Shared, but limited extent.
Limited,
yeah, yeah. I think this really need to be, you know, discussing about between the borders, how that really related, because, for example, you know, rivers across that boundaries, right?
Yes, rivers don't know national borders.
Exactly. Nature is always similar. Island. Borneo is one of the biggest islands in the world, right? The fourth biggest or third biggest.
That's right.
So that's really to understand.
And sometimes it's the way all of us are being trained. We are being trained to specialize in one particular. Yes. And normally researchers are very good in their discipline and they produce good reports. And sometimes we are not being trained how to bring that science to decision making, bring that science to policy making. So that's the beauty of this science panel. It's a brainchild of Prof. Jessex and Emma Torres. So they brought it and they tested it out in the biggest, the Amazon. And you are right, it is called the encyclopedia because it's about 1,000 pages,
Amazing.
34 chapters. And yeah, even colleagues at Science Panel Amazon say, hey, you at Science Panel Borneo and Congo, these two, Congo and Borneo, we are aspiring to produce similar report. We call it the assessment report of the Science Panel for Congo, Science Panel for Borneo. We hope to launch it at the COP30 this year in Belém, Brazil, inshallah.
Wow.
So,
very
ambitious. But it is about, like Prof. Jatna mentioned, bringing in existing knowledge and research findings already ongoing. And the way Science Panel Borneo did it is, hey, how do we do it? That's why we arrived at the 7 clusters. And I think we are a bit special. We put a special cluster on economy.
Okay. What is that? Why is that special emphasis on economy?
Yeah, because that's why SDSN Asia was set up in our region. It's only the 3rd office of SDSN. If you look at the history of why SDSN was set up, first in New York to take care of the Americas, and then Paris office to take care of Europe and Africa. Then the president said, Asia, this is a booming area. That's why Jeff came, and the special session this morning is about preparing a 20-year plan for energy. And the beauty of Science Panel is not only about biodiversity and forests, about nature, no. It's nowadays more complicated and complex. It's about nexus, connectivity. When you speak about biodiversity, oh, for water, water for life. You talk about water, WFE, water, food, energy. Everything is connected, Melissa, so it's very difficult. And we are trained in silos, even professionals, industrial experts. We are all trained in silos. Government officers also the same. But this is a challenge.
How do you mitigate the risk or overcome the challenges of this multidisciplinary, cross-collaboration, cross-border approach? There have been efforts before. Throughout history, there's been examples of it not working or failing. How will you avoid the pitfalls and make sure it works?
I think the most important is science first.
Science
is neutral, right? If you were started with the government always has a commitment and others. And NGOs, of course, they always has a different side. Science is neutral. So we start with that first. So people, decision makers and NGO community will understand the science. Because of the neutralities, we're not trying to be opposed. This is more environmentalists and developmentalists, but we are really neutral.
Yeah.
So to understand one cause because to the other cause, right? So we really need to understand that.
That's a good point, because scientists can talk to each other same language, right?
Exactly, but mind you, don't think only of the science of STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine. No, what is also important is the social science and humanity. So, and economics and governance, you see, it's very complicated. And that's why this Asian ASEAN workshop on sustainable development here happening yesterday and today, really important. And yesterday morning was about education. And we heard about how to overcome this complexity, the VUCA world, vulnerable, uncertain, right?
Yeah.
Ambiguous and complex. And they were mentioning, we need to train the younger generation about how to think about systems thinking, how to connect upstream, middle stream, downstream. Not easy, Melissa. But at the end of the day, and after listening to this morning's energy section, it's about trade-off. Everybody wants a comfortable living. Yeah. Everybody wants a good income. Everybody wants air conditioning. Right. Everybody wants handphone.
Okay, that's true. Let's not go as granular as the individual. Let's talk about economic interests. In Borneo, logging, palm oil, all are economic interests of somebody. Yeah. How do you mitigate or manage that? That is clearly a threat to biodiversity and your work.
One can influence others. Once you dry the soil there because of peat, that's very easy to catch fires. That's the forest fires. The haze everywhere in the Southeast Asia. The issue is that how do you manage that kind of that? So harmonizing the space is very important. Because then how do we treat the soil that is not really like in US and many other countries. Borneo is very special.
It's a unique soil in Borneo.
Exactly. The pit can deep to 30 meters.
Wow.
And that is really good for mitigation climates.
Yes.
So the carbon sinks, right? How come you get 30-meter deeps? Which means that if you dry up, they release big carbons. But if you keep it there, you can sink the carbon from the atmosphere, right?
The carbon,
sequester that. Yeah. So, we have to set aside which one is that really good for development, which one is really good for carbon sink in the future, for our ecosystem. That's why we discussing not only the geologists, biologists, social development and others. We sit down together, and that's why sustainable development, right?
That's right. And so that's why the economy comes into the picture.
Exactly.
Because all of us, at the end of the day, we are all human-centric, human first.
Yeah.
Of course, nature don't need the humans to be there, but when humans come in, we interfere with a lot of things. So in order to achieve that, we need to imagine. Just imagine if you are the Chief Minister, Premier or Menteri Besar, you need to figure out revenue for your state. And nowadays, everybody knows that, I cannot touch a forest so much, no more logging. What about the rare earth elements in the forest? What about the coal, the batu bara? We need energy to survive. We need everything for, the society, the comfort. So this is a big challenge for especially the Southeast Asia region. All the countries in our region are still very much developing. So that's why the word trade-off is very important. At the end of the day, we need to figure out, is it worth it to do mining? You need to do cost-benefit analysis, feasibility studies, but you cannot forget EIA, environmental impact assessment, social impact assessment, all sorts of impact assessment, Melissa. Difficult, complex. But can we do it? The answer, we must do it. We must do it. So how to do it? Hey, Menteri Besar, Chief Minister, District Officer, local authority leaders, you are not alone. Please look around. Who are the nearest professors and researchers? Where are the knowledge? That is why SDSM was formed. Bring about all the institutions that produce and do research, that generate knowledge. We must do the sharing. That's the beauty of this science panel. Keyword, bring the science. Because science bring in measurement, exact value. If we cannot do exact measurement, we do modeling, prediction. But it is calculated, intelligent prediction.
Okay, both of you are renowned scientists in your own right. Have you experienced times where policymakers, decision makers, politicians have ignored the science, that your work and research have not been translated into actionable policies and decisions when you know the evidence and the data says otherwise?
Yeah, of course. That's really happening all the time, right? We always scientists is always what you call it, translating science into policy is the most difficult one. It's not easy because it's complex issues, I mentioned. But more the complex is that in Borneo, the Indonesian, because of the moving capitals into
Nusantara.
Nusantara.
Okay.
That's more complex, right? But that really exciting, right? That's exciting, the challenge and everything. How many 3 million people coming to that site, and there's going to be impact.
So how, Prof. When was it set to? I think it's in 20 years that Nusantara
it's already
moving, but the idea is to establish a capital city.
Years by years.
I mean,
2030.
Critics say that there will be environmental impact, there will be displaced indigenous peoples. How do we mitigate the risks?
That's why the science panel is very important. Because the science can tell how do we reduce the impact, how do we bring that local community to be power, how the traditional wisdom can be also used by the decision makers. You know, that science has to be bring to the table. Otherwise, the government said, okay, I want to build this, but it's not really good for the environment, for themselves, right? For example, okay, you build at 250,000 capital cities, 250,000 hectares capital city in East Borneo. What the consequences of that? What the communities, all these things? You know, it's complex issues. But if we really understand the science, right, where you can build, how, and the government said, well, going to have the forest cities. 70% of them will be forests.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, sustainable forest cities.
Yes, I think that's the ideas of we are put it in our knowledge to that societies.
And that's why now we are starting to think as the whole of ASEAN. And in 2025, Prof. Jeff Sachs and the rest of the world are giving Malaysia a challenge. Malaysia, become a good chairman. And the idea is, how do we make ourselves to fulfill the goals of the ASEAN 2025? There's a 2045 vision of ASEAN, one vision, one community. Where you look at the whole 10 countries, inshallah, it's going to be 11 with Timor-Leste.
Timor-Leste coming.
And it's going to be a population of about 650 million, 670 million. How do we act together as one? Even in the systems session this morning, they're looking at where are the perhaps sources of renewable energy already in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
It may come from Kalimantan, Indonesia, Sarawak, hydrogen energy, Laos, Cambodia, and how do we fit and plan for a common grid for the whole 10, inshallah 11 countries of ASEAN. Start thinking like that, because when we learn from some other countries, planning of 25 years and even some 50 years planning of having a common grid.
Wow, so thinking as a collective.
That's it, Ms. Melissa.
That's a very important one.
And in the education session yesterday, this is what we like to do for ASEAN. How do we learn, educate the next generation to think as a one community, where we can move from one state to another of the 11 states freely, currency perhaps the same in the future.
Okay. So you painted the vision. So I see the vision and I see the urgency and the passion. What are the next steps? You talk about the assessment report for Borneo at next year's COP,
That's
which
right.
is a...
This year's COP.
This year.
Sorry, I forget, it's 2025 already at COP 30. I'm still thinking in last year's mode. So if it means that you're going to compile an encyclopedia of Borneo from scientific research, including indigenous and local knowledge,
Yes.
that's a tall order, it's a big ask.
Big.
What's the next step? Where are you at now? How do you ensure that you meet your ambitions?
If I may start first.
Yes, Professor, please.
Yeah, first we look at the on land first. We haven't seen the coastal and the oceans, Melissa.
Yes.
If you look at Southeast Asia, part of our strength are the oceans, and we haven't looked at the potential of the blue carbon. It's a lot of work. So part of the task of the science panel is to make sure layers of successes of brilliant, smart scientists of the future for ASEAN. So it's a tall order, but we need to do it.
And Prof. Jan, how are you going to rally your troops in Indonesia to make sure that there's also scientific knowledge being shared across, and the new avenues or the new frontiers being explored for scientific research?
Of course, we hosted also by the Indonesian Academy of Science. Of course, we are a university in Borneo itself that's going to be working together across the borders, across the provinces. It's very interesting, and across the islands, maybe in Java and many others. So that's really important, because it used to be only government, but now it's really trying to get this one step by step toward an encyclopedia. Of course, is going to be done. But I think they started by the 16th, in the next 2 days. We're going to have a meeting, in Jakarta, where Jeff Risak and many other team, and trying to, step by step, how do we get to balance? So that's really important.
Exciting times ahead.
And mind you, Melissa, education is not about formal education. Don't forget the informal and the non-formal. So we're thinking already, all this good knowledge must also trickle down to state government trickle down to district officers, trickle down to local authority leaders. To make SDG work, it must work at your local level. And technology must come in. And with human pandemic of COVID-19, we learn a lot of, in Malaysia case, My Sejahtera. Everybody, every individual become responsible. If they detect symptoms, they report and be very disciplined. We are thinking now, My River Sejahtera, My Forest Sejahtera. Everybody look out for, contamination in the river. Somebody is doing no good in the forest. We report on my forest, my river, my
It's
ecosystem.
a way to take accountability for our environment.
Utilizing technology now. So if we work together, which I think Malaysia boleh, Indonesia boleh, Indonesia bisa, ASEAN boleh, inshallah
Indonesia
we can
bisa,
achieve that one vision, one community.
Well, thank you so much for sharing
welcome.
this exciting work that you're embarking on, but also your insights into why it's important that we support this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you.
That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night. you.